What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Football Busters podcast. Today is Tuesday, January 24th, and my name is Will, and joining me is my co-host Eric. How you feeling today, brother?
I'm feeling great today, man. I'm really excited to get into this one. I'm like a kid on Christmas right now for this mock draft. Couldn't be more excited.
Hell yeah. And today we're going to be going through the first round of the rookie mock draft. Sleeper updated. They got some of the rookies on there now. So we're going to be taking some time to go through that and explain some of our picks to you guys and who we're looking forward to seeing this season. So with that being said, we can kind of go ahead and get into it. You guys can see the screen already. We got Sleeper loaded up now, and we're going to go ahead and get going. I've got the 101, Eric's got the 102, and we're going to alternate with every pick still. I know you guys see the computer there still. We're going to still pick who we want there, and we're going to talk about it. So, you ready to get started, Eric?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Hell yeah.
Here we go.
Hell yeah. So, we got the 101 pick. I'm sure everyone's kind of been talking about this for a long time. It's kind of a no-brainer here. At least depending on what your team needs, but even still, I think it's still a no-brainer depending on no matter what your team needs, and that's going to be Mr. Bijan Robinson. I just think he's too well-rounded as a running back. I've been looking into him a lot as of late, and he's just really good all around. The only knock I've got for Bijan is that he's not like a top-flight athlete, but at the same time, he's still going to be able to get every single thing done you need at the running back position. So I got no complaints about Bijan whatsoever.
Yeah, I love that pick. Pretty much the consensus 101, and he should be probably the best running back prospect we've seen since Saquon. You could get nitpicky and talk about some things like he probably dances a little bit too much in the backfield, doesn't get all of the yards that are available to him on every play, but I mean, he makes up for that with the huge runs, the great vision, the elusiveness. There's not too much bad to say about Bijan. Obvious 101, so I like that a lot.
Hell yeah.
For me, up at the 102, I like being here because I get to take a pick that might be a little bit off consensus. I don't think people will think it's crazy, but I'm going to go CJ Stroud over Bryce Young here. If it'll let me. There we go. And then I can repause it. But for me, the difference between them is really small. We're talking about, splitting hairs here, but I think CJ Stroud is a technician. He's really good and consistent with his footwork and mechanics, which leads to great accuracy as well. He shows great touch, ability to layer the ball over linebackers, plenty of arm strength. And like Bryce Young has a lot of those same capabilities, but if you look a little bit further into the analytics, Stroud is better in a lot of key areas, including QBR, yards per attempt, completion percentage, EPA per play, total EPA touchdown rate, TD to interception ratio, stuff like that. And so that's enough to give him just a slight edge for me.
Yeah, I do like CJ Stroud. I like Bryce Young a little bit better, but I think that really just comes down to who it is that they, played with, stuff like that. I feel like CJ Stroud had a much better supporting cast than Bryce
Yep.
Young did this year. But at the same time, I really think you're just splitting hairs between these two. I think they're both going to be great.
Yep.
And with that being said, for the 103, I'd go Bryce Young here, honestly.
Yep.
Especially if you're in a SuperFlex league where you need quarterbacks, this is going to be the cheapest time you're going to be able to get a young quarterback for this kind of deal. And to get a guy like Bryce Young, who has been highly touted, or a CJ Stroud that has been highly touted for multiple years at this point, it's just somebody that you would want to make that move for, I feel like.
Yeah, 100%. So let me set that for you. Put Bryce Young in there. And yeah, I wouldn't hate Bryce Young at two. Either way, I think both of those quarterbacks should go back to back right after Bijan. I think the only things you're worried about with Young is size. And really, we've seen guys like Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Drew Brees get it done at the NFL at his size. So just not too worried about it. And then we get to the 104. I'm back up on the board. The two guys that are kind of in consideration here are probably Jahmyr Gibbs and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm going to go with JSN. He's my guy this year. I really like him. If it'll let me pick him. Oh, I got to set the player. Put him in there. Pause the draft. So yeah, I think he's just the most well-rounded wide receiver in this entire draft class. I think he's incredibly safe. We did see last year he missed basically the entire season due to a hamstring injury. I'm just not too worried about that. I saw all I needed to see in his true sophomore season where he outproduced Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who at the time were juniors and seniors on the team. And so for him to be able to do that is incredibly impressive. He also had that crazy 347-yard receiving game in the Rose Bowl versus Utah. So yeah, I think he's just incredibly dynamic. My kind of comps for him are like Keenan Allen or Amon-Ra St. Brown plus is what I'm thinking.
I like that. Yeah, I think he's a good prospect. I think he's a really good prospect. I know a lot of people were concerned about injury. I know he was dealing with like a hamstring injury for a lot of 2022. I don't think
Yeah,
that's indicative of anything going forward at all. I think he's just going to come
same.
into the league and just slot in wherever he is, whoever he ends up.
Yep, totally agree.
Cool. And with the 105, I'm going to go and take the easy pick here. I feel like I'm getting a lot of the lobs here too, but I do like Jahmyr Gibbs a good bit. We're going to talk about him a little bit. Somebody I've seen Eric talk about a good bit on Twitter. So if you guys don't follow us on Twitter, you guys should. This is a guy that Eric talks about a lot because he's been getting a lot of comps to Alvin Kamara, stuff like that. Eric doesn't see it. I've been looking at some of his film as well. I don't really see it either. I know a lot of the comparisons are through like, oh, he has really good balance, this and that. But when it comes to balance, Alvin Kamara is obviously like top flight, like one of the best probably in the world. It's
Yeah,
tough to really compare him to that. But in terms of just Jahmyr Gibbs as a player himself, just from what I've seen, he does have that top end speed. So he is one of those home run players where if he gets in the open field, he can take off and go. He doesn't have a bad fumbling problem from what I've seen. He's fumbled 4 times in college. Uh, Hits the holes really well. In terms of size, I guess you'd want him to be a little bit bigger than he is, but otherwise, I really do like him. He's good in the passing game, great runner as well. So, yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs feels like one of those good all-around picks, too.
yeah, I think he's a fantastic value at 105. And I don't want to get misconstrued. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's a really good player. It's just I think the hype has gotten a little too far, and I think Alvin Kamara is just that's disrespect to AK, man. That guy one is prototypical size, and he can do all of what Jahmyr Gibbs does better at that size. So the only thing that Jahmyr has on him is speed, which I think is really important. He's fantastic in the receiving game, like you said. I think he lacks a little bit in just the in between the tackles running, but that's kind of to be expected of a guy that size. But yeah, I like that pick a lot. We'll move
Hmm.
to the 106, and I think this one is kind of a lob for me as well. You could probably make an argument for some other players here, but I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston from TCU. Just a huge wide receiver, man. We're talking about a guy that's 6'4", over 200 pounds, and moves like a guy that's 5'10", 180. Like he's got crazy acceleration, crazy long speed. He's also really good as a jump ball guy, contested catch guy. I think he's fantastic after the catch. I'm a little bit worried that he's not a natural hands catcher. I think he likes to body catch a little bit too much for me, and so he's a little bit risky. Whereas like I see a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba as super safe. I think Quentin Johnston probably has a higher ceiling but a much lower floor.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know, man. There's something about TCU wide receivers ever since Josh Doxson. I just haven't
Yep.
had a good, you know, just haven't had a good feeling about TCU receivers. But I do think after watching Quentin Johnston and just seeing the things that TCU was able to do this year also, I think
Yep.
that he is going to end up being good and he's going to end up panning out in the league as well.
Yeah, I dig it.
Nice. And then for the 107, gonna go, or 108, sorry. Oh, no, it's
No, you're right.
107. It's
107.
107.
Yeah,
I'm
you're on it.
tripping. I'm going to go with somebody who I feel like the Dynasty community has valued a lot. I've also been taking a look at some of his tape, at least from the year prior to last year, and I do see where a lot of the hype is coming from. And that's Mr. Will Levis from Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just feel like he's going to get valued a lot by these teams. So I'm looking in terms of production, who I think is going to get slotted in pretty quickly. I feel like Will Levis is going to end up being one of those guys. He's not really like a project guy that they've been talking about, like Anthony Richardson, where it's like he needs a lot of work. But they're saying Will Levis, he's looking like one of those guys that is going to get to slot in pretty quick and is going to get to have a big part of an offense pretty soon. Now, what offense that is, I have no idea. It could be a toss-up between, I know a lot of teams in the hunt right now, like the Raiders. You got like the Panthers out there looking for a quarterback. You've got obviously the Texans, but the Colts. I just don't know where this guy's going to end up at, but I feel like he's going to get valued pretty well wherever it is he does end up at. And I do like some of the tape I've seen on him. I do think he has been good when he had good talent around him. He didn't really have that his senior year at all.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. His senior year, his offensive coordinator left, and he lost a lot of talent from that offense. So that was a big difference for him. 2021 tape was a lot better. I'm surprised to hear that from you though, because we've both kind of been shitting on him.
Hmm.
But I like that you're willing to go through the process and change your ideas. I'm also up to change my ideas, but I'm just not quite there on Levis yet. I do think right now it sounds like the NFL investment in him is going to be high, and I think draft capital matters a ton for these quarterbacks. So I don't mind that at 107 at all. I don't know that I would have went there quite yet, but I dig it.
No, that's fair.
Um,
That's absolutely fair.
yeah. So we'll go to the 108. And this is where things get really interesting, at least for me. I think there's probably 4 or 5 guys that you could argue for on the board here right now. But I'm going to go with the one that I think is probably the safest.
Hmm.
You could definitely go upside play here, but I'm going to go with Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC and out of Pitt. His sophomore year, he won the Blitnikoff with Kenny Pickett at Pittsburgh, then transferred to USC, played with Caleb Williams. Did get hurt, so he missed a few games. That kind of knocked his box scores, but he was still super efficient. He's another guy that I think, similar to JSN, is a technician, a fantastic route runner, easily creates separation. He's probably the guy in this class that I've watched the most tape on. I watched legit every game of his so far. So I really, really like his tape. I think he's incredibly clean. A comp for him for me would be like Calvin Ridley. And so if you can get that type of player at the 108, I'd be ecstatic.
Yeah, he's just got a lot of the stuff you're looking for in a wide receiver. I know he is a little bit, some people have said like weight wise, because I think he's what, 170, 175.
I think so. That's what he's listed at. I think he's going to come in like around combine time, a little bit heavier than that, probably in the
Yeah.
low 180s, but it is a little bit concerning.
I mean, it's concerning, but then you got guys like Devonta Smith who have just been fine in the league. As much as people were upset about his weight and his size coming in, he's just been okay.
Yeah.
And I think Jordan Addison, it's like you said, he's a good prospect, low breakout age as well, very young player. So it's good to see that he's young as he is, playing at the level that he is playing at. So yeah, I like that pick a lot.
Yeah.
And taking a look at the 109, I've got some options here. I've definitely got some options. I feel like I've gone with a lot of quarterbacks this video, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but also
Not a bad thing at all.
the quarterback that's left is more of a project and is very much an unsure thing. So, it really depends on what your team needs here. If you've got the time and you want to develop your team, I feel like you could go with this player. But I'm going to go from the perspective of you need these guys pretty soon. I'm going to go with Zach Charbonnet. Or was that Carbonet? Charbonnet? How's that
No, you're right.
pronounced?
Charbonnet. Yeah, you
Zach
got it.
Charbonnet.
Yep.
Just taking a look at his tape as well, I was a pretty big fan of his tape. I think he's one of those guys who's kind of going to fly a little bit more under the radar than he should. Of course, he's not better than like a Bijan Robinson. I feel like Bijan has very much separated himself from the rest of this class. But between
Yeah.
like the other top tier guys like him and Jameer Robinson, I feel like they're both very, very good. I'm just taking a look at some stats right now just so I can get. I'm not lying to you guys. Appeared in 10 games, finished the regular season leading the nation in all-purpose yards per game and topped the Pac-12 in rushing yards per game. Ran for 100 yards in 8 games. Became the 9th Bruin to record back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. So he's got the resume there. He is a guy who is out there performing. And
Yeah.
it really depends on the landing spot at the same time, but I do like him as a talent. And I think running backs are just about fine wherever they end up at, as long as they're good talents themselves.
Yeah, I love that pick. I have him as my running back 4 right now. And again, we're super early in the process. There's a lot more tape to be watched, a lot more stats to dive into. But I like him a lot. He's got prototypical size at 220. He might even be a little bit bigger come combine time, like 225. I don't think he has top end speed. But you don't need to be when you're that big. I think he has underrated lateral agility, really good vision, and just he's a truck, dude. He's impossible to bring down. And so I think he'll fit in, like you said, just about anywhere he goes. So I like that pick a lot.
Oh, and he's good at pass protection, which is really good for a
Yeah.
rookie as well.
Yep. And underrated as a pass catcher. Again, a guy that big, you don't expect that most often, but he was used fairly frequently in that portion of the game.
Yeah.
So then I'm up at the 110, and I'm gonna do it. I'm swinging for the fences. Give me Anthony Richardson.
Hmm.
I debated him back at 108. I think, like you said, he's more of a project. If he comes into the NFL, I would hope that he sits for at least a year to get more experience, learn the game a little bit more. But I think even if he comes in and starts year one, he can contribute right away as a rusher. He's one of the better rushing quarterback prospects that we've seen quite some time. He's similar. He's bigger than like a Justin Fields. He's a lot bigger than Malik Willis, and I think he's probably what people wanted Malik Willis to be.
Hmm.
He's similar statistically to Willis, but we're talking about a guy that played in the SEC versus at Liberty against way tougher competition. Didn't have a great supporting cast around him. So yeah, I just think if you give him a year or two to develop as a passer, that combined with his rushing floor is going to be incredible and great for fantasy.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of comps out there that are saying like his floor as of right now, and of course we haven't seen him in an NFL jersey yet, so take it with a grain of salt. But his floor right now is Josh Dobbs, and his ceiling is MVP Cam Newton. So it's like it's a pretty big
Yeah,
range of outcomes there. But if you can get towards that top end, you're definitely gonna pay off. It's definitely gonna pay off.
yeah. No, I like that.
Hell yeah. And then looking at this next pick, again I've got some options. There's one guy I feel like in real life I would probably take, but I don't know if it's like the smart move. I want to give you guys actual smart information. You know what I'm saying?
That's what we're here for.
But with Dynasty, I try to have a little bit of fun. But I like Sean Tucker a lot, and that's probably who I'm going to go with this spot, the running
Okay.
back out of Syracuse.
Yep.
He's just somebody else, again, who shows that extra ability to be able to go out there and catch the ball. I feel like this is a really good running back class when it comes to just being an all-around prospect. But
Yeah.
Sean Tucker is someone else who shows that, soft hands, able to catch the ball, shows really good acceleration and stop start. Needs to work a little bit on his patience, but I feel like that's going to come with the game. But in terms of just explosiveness and just big play potential, he's got it, honestly. And in terms of size, he's a little bit undersized. He needs to probably put on maybe another 10, 15 pounds to get to that prototypical size. I think he's measuring in around 205, I believe.
I think so. He's listed at a lot of different weights.
So we won't have
I
an
like to
official one
go.
until they get there, really.
Combine is going to be the measuring stick, but I think he's actually more like 220. I think he is prototypical size. If you look at like Campus to Canton, who I trust a lot for their like Devi and college uh, stats in general, but also for their measurables, they have him listed at 220.
Okay. Well, if he's listed at 220, then there's absolutely no issue.
Yeah.
Absolutely none. So it really, again, a lot of this stuff comes down to landing spot when it comes to running backs and their ceilings. But if he ends up in a good spot, I think he's going to produce very early on. He should be on the field at least in a third down back role as well.
Yeah, I like Sean Tucker. I think I have him a little bit lower than you, but like you said, prototypical size. He's a track athlete, so he's got the long speed, he's got the acceleration. And you even mentioned it. You acknowledged the fact that he's lacking a little bit in the patience. I see some
Hmm.
issues with vision and just consistency as an in between the tackles runner. But like you said, once he gets to the edge,
Yeah.
he's gone in a flash. He can take anything to the house. So you love to see that from a running back, big play guy. So yeah, I like that pick at 111. And the last pick of the draft here at 112, I'm up. And this one is pretty easy for me. Um, I think this is crazy value for this guy all the way at 112. It just so happens there's a lot of really good talent ahead of him. But I'm going to take Zach Evans, running back out of Ole Miss, and originally from TCU. So I think a lot of people are going to make the argument that his box scores didn't look great. If you just look at his overall stats, they weren't the best. He was sharing the field at both of the schools that he was at with really, really talented running backs and Kendre Miller and Quinshawn Judkins. And so he just didn't get the workhorse role. But if you look at his kind of like underlying stats, um, and compare him amongst the consensus top 6 running backs in the class, he ranks second in yards per carry over team. And I prefer yards per carry over team to just straight yards per carry because it factors in competition, offensive line play, and stuff like that you wouldn't get from just your standard yards per carry. And then he was also first in EPA per play, rushing yards over expected per attempt, explosive rush rate, breakaway rush rate, and he was the lowest in stuffed rush rate. So even though it doesn't show up just in his total box score, I think he was incredibly efficient. And just watching the tape, he moves unlike any back that I've seen recently. Like his ability to take what should be direct contact with a defender and turn those into arm tackles consistently is really, really impressive to me. And so that's why I like him a lot at 112.
Okay, I like that. And that's going to round out our round one. Just letting you guys know, we're going to keep doing these mock drafts. This isn't going to be the only one. So we are going to go, and once Sleeper gets more players available to us that we can go in here and plug in, cool. Especially once we get closer to that combine, we're definitely going to be doing more of these as well because a lot of stuff is going to change. But as of right now, this is our way too early first round draft predictions for the Dynasty draft. So is there anything you want to tell the people before we head out of here, Eric?
Yeah, just like you said, it is kind of way too early. We're still diving into this very early on in the process. Things are going to change, so keep that in mind. I hope that you guys enjoyed this and learned something from it. But if there's anybody that you really liked that didn't get picked in the first round, let us know down in the comments. Let us know who you like in here, who you don't like, any of that stuff. Just engage with us. We really appreciate it. And do all the other good YouTube stuff too. That helps us out a ton. If you want to like the video, if you want to subscribe, hit the notification bell. We're going to be putting out more mock drafts, like Will said. We're going to be doing some prospect profiles, breaking down each individual player coming up in this year's draft. So stick with us. We got a lot coming up.
Hell yeah. And with that being said, if you guys made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, and we love you, and we will catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.